Well, the Brisbane Lions have defeated Essendon 13-12-90 to 11-6-72 in what you'd have to say was a pretty good performance by the Bombers. I don't really believe in honourable losses, but really this is probably in that category. You really couldn't be disappointed at the end of the day if you're an Essendon supporter, given that we were down so much early in the game. It looked like it was going to be a 100-point loss, and we actually looked like we're in a position to win the game potentially late in that third quarter and early in the last quarter. And we're going to talk about the game right now. So this was really a game of two halves. Like most of you watching, I was probably pretty disappointed in the first quarter, pretty flat. I was kind of emotionless. I was thinking, just got to get through the last three quarters now and, just be a good supporter and watch it out. And what do you know? We actually turned it on and gave ourselves something to look forward to. So it was pretty impressive, but you can't hide the fact that it was a poor start. And some of the problems with our game plan were apparent in that first quarter and just in the first portion of the game. And there were actually signs even before the opening bounce. I was listening to Fox Footy, and Chris Fagan said that they were planning on shutting down Essendon's uncontested marking game. And as soon as I heard that, I thought, well, we're going to be in a little bit of trouble. And in the first quarter, Brisbane had 71 uncontested possessions to Essendon's 53. They had 31 uncontested marks to 14. 5 marks inside 50 to 1. But it was the uncontested mark game, and they were not allowing us to control the ball, and Brisbane were controlling the ball. And as I've said quite a few times on this channel, we don't really have a plan B. And we were really exposed in the first quarter. I don't mind it when that happens, because to me it forces action. It forces something to happen. It forces the coach's box to really look at what's going on and actually make some changes, because it was pretty ugly in that first quarter. Charlie Cameron got the first goal of the game. Martin did respond with a nice little snap goal to even it up, but then they just it was all too easy for them. Fletcher, Rayner, Archie, Wilmot, Lohman all got goals. One of them, Wilmot, I don't know if you remember, and you guys might mention this in the comments if you think you know the goal I'm talking about. But in that first quarter, Wilmot got a goal, and all the defenders were sort of running backwards, giving him more space to run in. Like Setterfield was, about probably 15 metres ahead of him, and Wilmot was, I reckon, 70 metres out, and Setterfield kept running backwards to get 30, 40 metres out from goal, and Wilmot thought, I'm just going to keep on running in. All the defenders were retreating, just giving them all this extra space to run into, and it's just so frustrating when that happens, and it's been a hallmark of some of our deficiencies this year that does tend to happen, and it was looking pretty ugly at quarter time. Now, we did start to turn things around a little bit in the second quarter. Not so much in terms of statistically, but at least on the scoreboard, we were helped a little bit by Brisbane's inaccuracy. Brisbane kicked 6 behinds for the quarter right up until 10 seconds to go, when they finally got a goal right at the end of the quarter to Logan Morris. We got a couple of goals to big 2-metre Peter, who played a pretty solid game, and Durham, who was injured early with an ankle injury in that quarter, but he came back on, so we hope it's not too serious. Obviously, he came back onto the ground, so you'd hope with a 10-day break he would be okay. Sometimes these things can flare up during the week, and if it's Essendon, and what you think is just a minor injury turns into a 4 to 6 weeker. But he did, come back onto the game, and Durham actually kicked a goal in that quarter, so that was pretty good. But really, the same problems were prevalent in the second quarter as the first. The only difference was Brisbane had kicked inaccurately and we were more efficient. Just kicking the 3 goals straight. They kicked 1 goal 6. I mean, it could have been 40, 50 points the difference, really, at half time. And they'd really taken our game off us completely. The uncontested marks at half time, Brisbane had 74 to 32. And Essendon lead uncontested marks in the competition. We normally have 105 per game, and we had 32 at half time, which was 42 less than Brisbane. So we were really getting outplayed, and I don't think any of us saw what was coming in the second half. 2-metre Peter, good credit to him in that second quarter. for kicking a couple of goals. He's a very accurate kick. I reckon he's one of the best 3 or 4 kicks in the competition. He's a beautiful kick for goal. And even though he hasn't been dominating on the scoreboard these last few weeks, he's been, I think, taking important marks, kicked a couple of goals when needed, not just this week, but in previous weeks. And I think he's been contributing even when he hasn't been scoring, just being involved in chains of possessions, taking marks when he needs to. So he's playing really, really well, and we need him to, because we're running out of tall players or anyone over 190 centimetres or so. So he really did help to keep us in the game with those couple of goals. Yep, but at halftime it was still looking pretty meagre, and to be fair, it was lucky we weren't 40 to 50 points down. So the third quarter was really one of our best quarters of the season, and it will be remembered for the performances of Jye Caldwell and also Nate Caddy. Jye Caldwell, an incredible performance really in that quarter. One of the best quarters ever, I think, by a player, at least in terms of just output. 18 possessions, 7 clearances and a goal. You'd be happy with that in a game for a lot of players, and he had that in one quarter. That was just astonishing. And Nate Caddy kicked a couple of goals, including that incredible goal over his head. Whilst he didn't explode for a 5 or 6 goal game, I thought it was probably the best game I've seen him play, because you could tell watching Caddy, and I want you guys to let me know what you think in the comments, you could just tell watching him that he's full of confidence and he thinks he can rip the game apart. You can just tell. He's got that look in his eyes. He can't wait to get out there. He can't wait for the ball to come down to him. You can tell he's thinking to himself, I'm more athletic than you, my opponent. I can outplay you. I can jump over you. And he's just a player that I think has immense belief in himself. You can see it in him. And he kicked 2 goals in that quarter. There was the first goal. Caldwell then kicked the second goal. Martin got the third. Darcy Gardner chipped in for a goal for Brisbane before Setterfield kicked a nice goal from about 25 metres out directly in front, and Caddy kicked that incredible goal over his head, one of the contenders for goal of the year. He also had a bit of a brain fade moment where he took a mark 5 metres out and played on, and for some reason played on and sprayed it. But the Bombers really started to get back into the game, and in the second half, our uncontested marks that we allowed Brisbane were much, much different. We allowed Brisbane 74 uncontested marks in the first half, but we only allowed them 51 in the second half. Our pressure rating was up. Brisbane, at least to the naked eye as well, watching it, didn't look like they had any easy possessions, and it was just a better performance all over the ground. I thought we were playing on a bit more. It looked like we were not being backwards in terms of chipping it around and playing silly possession games. We were being a bit more open and attacking. I did hear during the week that it looked like we were going to plan to play on a bit more and be a bit quicker in our ball movement. And certainly we did that in the third quarter. So you really couldn't complain about the third quarter. We went into 3-quarter time, only 2 goals down, and looking like we were a chance to win. But Jye Caldwell was really the reason. I mean, it's always easy to look at the spectacular stuff that Caddy was doing, but really Jye Caldwell at the coalface was really the reason we got back into that quarter, or the main reason anyway, and certainly just an outstanding quarter, one of the best individual quarters. I remember about 20 years ago, Marcus Ashcroft had, I think, 19 possessions in a quarter. I think it was Marcus Ashcroft. I was doing a bit of a Google search quickly before I was narrating this video, and I couldn't find it anywhere, but I do remember Marcus Ashcroft, maybe it was against Fremantle or someone at the Gabba, but I think he had 19 possessions in a quarter. So this was pretty close to the second most amount of possessions ever recorded in a quarter, as far as I'm aware anyway. Certainly not far away from the record ever. So the Bombers, pretty close to the Lions, 2 goals down at 3-quarter time. So the last quarter started in pretty exciting fashion. We actually hit the front. We kicked a couple of goals. Gresham got a nice little snap and probably had a bit of an underrated game. Gresham did have a bit of a selfish moment in the second quarter where he was running into goal from 50 and was never going to make the distance and kicked it and was just marked on the goal line and probably should have looked to spot up someone. But, did a couple of nice things. Kicked that goal to get us within a goal. Goldstein tied the scores, and we actually got a point up at one point. But unfortunately, from that point onwards, the game kind of fizzled out. We didn't kick another goal. Brisbane didn't go berserk or anything. They just kicked 3 goals for the remainder of the quarter, which wasn't anything exceptional, but it was enough for them to walk away with the 3-goal win. And look, I think the effort was there. I don't think our effort fell away necessarily, but Brisbane's class, and this is often what happens when you're playing good teams on their home ground, they just do enough to win in that last quarter, and we just didn't quite have the manpower or the skill to just push forward and get that extra couple of goals. And we didn't really have an opportunity to get them. There wasn't too many opportunities in that last quarter after Goldstein kicked the goal to tie the scores. So what were some of the key numbers in the game? Brisbane had 397 disposals to 359. We don't win games where we have less disposals than the opposition. Brad Scott did mention in his press conference that a lot of those uncontested marks they did have were in the back half. But I did notice that there was a couple of occasions where I reckon they controlled the ball for about 2 minutes and just chipped it forward, and I reckon took about 10 or 12 uncontested marks in a row from the back line to the forward line and ended up having a shot at goal, and I reckon that happened on at least a couple of occasions. They actually had 251 kicks to 190, which is a big difference in kicks, especially for us. So given that we were well beaten in the possession game, we did pretty well to hang into the game, and I think that perhaps goes to how we played in the second half, and maybe having a smaller lineup might have helped in a way, because it forced us to go small, it forced us to play on, and it forced us to be a little bit more creative, at least I felt. Inside 50s, Brisbane led 62 to 43. They actually had 20 at quarter time, Brisbane. So on target for 80 in the game. 62 is too many. If you let an opponent have 60 inside 50s, they win about 95% of games. So at the end of the day, we really needed to keep them down to probably under 50. Stoppages, we won the clearances 36 to 31. Centre clearances were level. Stoppage clearances, we led 24 to 19. We had 8 more turnovers, and Brisbane did score off turnover quite a bit in this game. They had about 40 more uncontested possessions, which, as I said, not really a bad performance from Essendon, considering that's kind of our A game, the uncontested possession game, and we're able to hang in there. And I really want to see how we go forward with this smaller lineup, because it's going to have to be a smaller lineup. Even if they do bring in a couple of these players from the mid-season draft, it's still going to be a much smaller lineup given the amount of players over 190 centimetres out of the team. So it might be a little bit of a silver lining situation where it causes a little bit of a change in how we play. I hope so anyway. Marks inside 50. We actually had 13 marks inside 50. So this was unlike us. We've been pretty hard to watch this year in terms of being able to get easy goals. And I thought we were able to get some easier goals. We were able to spot players up a bit easier, and that came down to how we were moving the ball. And a lot of that came in the second half. At quarter time, we didn't have a mark inside 50. It was 5-0. So those 13 marks inside 50 all came in the last 3 quarters. So that's a good sign going forward. In terms of the individual players, we'll go through them. Caldwell was probably the best player. I mean, the third quarter got us back into the game. He had 30 possessions for the game, 10 clearances and 15 contested possessions. He had 123 champion data points. Nick Martin did what he always does, and that's be a classy player. He kicked 2 goals. He always kicks goals. I've said this like a broken record. Put him in the forward line. He's like a unicorn. He'll just kick goals. He's one of those players that can create something out of nothing. And he had 29 possessions. If he has 29 possessions, he's going to kick 1 or 2 goals every week. He just does it all the time. Merritt was not spectacular, but had 28 possessions and did what he always does. Played a little bit in the back line. Brad Scott even said in his press conference they had to put him in the back line because they had no one else. And his defensive skills are good. He's a very good tackler, Merritt. And he's obviously a good kick. So that's one of the reasons why they did put him down there. He still had the 7 contested possessions among his 28 possessions. Setterfield had 23 possessions, 9 contested possessions, and 7 tackles. He is our leading tackler pretty much every week, or pretty close to it. Peter Wright had over 100 champion data points. He was the 3rd ranked Essendon player. Statistically, anyway, the 3rd best Essendon player. Kicked 2 goals, 2 important goals. They were goals that kept us in the game when it looked like the game was slipping away in the first half. Redmond had 26 possessions. I feel Redmond's struggling a little bit. I feel he's making errors. don't know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. But it feels like he's just going and not really being as productive in terms of linking up and reaching that level of output that he did 2 years ago. He's never quite reached that. So he had a lot of possessions, but I don't really think he had a huge influence on the game. Roberts, I thought, was pretty good. He seems to get his 20 touches every week. Goldstein battled away for 39 hitouts. Only had the 8 touches, kicked a goal. I'm just thankful that he's in the team. I'm thankful that he's on our list. He really is a master of his craft, a genuine old-school ruckman. Hobbs was okay. His kicking still lets him down. He had that shot for goal where he couldn't make the distance. He's just not a good kick. That's just the thing about Hobbs. He just is not a good kick. He's not a long kick. It seems to stay in the air too long. He has these kind of loopy sort of kicks. Still had the 19 possessions. Laverty, I thought, was pretty good. Like, in difficult conditions down there for him, being the key backman, he had the 15 possessions, 7 marks, 6 contested possessions, and I only recall him being genuinely outmarked, I think, once. But really, given that he's our leading defender, I think we could all be pretty happy with his effort. Gresham didn't have a huge game, but had his moments. Kicked a nice goal in that last quarter to get us within a goal and had the 13 possessions. Caddy only had the 10 possessions, but like I said, probably his best game, just because he looked like he could have torn the game apart. It's one of those games where he kicked 2, but if everything went his way, he could have kicked 5. There was a couple of marks he flew for that he didn't get. He's not far away from just tearing a game open. And I fear for the team that he's playing against when he tears that game open. I'm not quite sure when it's going to be. I hope it's against Carlton. I'm not quite sure that's going to be the case. But I thought this was a terrific game from Caddy because it wasn't a huge game in terms of statistical output, but you could just see what he's capable of doing. Dersma didn't have a huge influence on the game, took a couple of key marks at some key points, but just had the 12 possessions. Guelphy was okay, 6 contested possessions and 10 marks, didn't have a huge influence on the game, but he certainly didn't have a negative game, I don't think. Angus Clark was not as good as he was in his first game, just had the 11 possessions. I think he's going to be a 200 game player. I just like the look of him. It feels like he's played 100 games already. He's just one of those players. Perkins did what he normally does and had 15 possessions, and he didn't kick a goal this time. Kako's game was, I'd call Kako busy. He kicked a point. He had 11 possessions, and it's a difficult position for Kako down there, especially playing against the reigning premiers, and you sort of expect him to, kick his 1 or 2 goals, which he, to be honest, he hasn't really been doing, but I don't think the game plan is suited to Kako at the moment. He got a little bit of the ball around the middle of the ground, and I thought was a reasonable contributor. Day Wicks didn't really have any major influence on the game, just had the 9 possessions. McGrath, only 4 kicks, 11 handballs, but I think he did a pretty good job on Charlie Cameron. Charlie Cameron had no influence on the game, essentially, at all. Charlie Cameron just kicked the 1 goal, which came in the first quarter, and did essentially nothing for the rest of the game. So McGrath was playing on him. I noticed in the first quarter, I'm pretty sure he was playing on him for the rest of the game. It's a bit difficult to tell from the TV who's playing on who all the time, but it certainly looked like he was playing on Cameron, and that's his job. He kept Bobby Hill pretty quiet on Anzac Day, obviously, so he did his job. Pryor was pretty solid with 14 possessions without being spectacular. Zach Johnson, first game, good luck to him, 11 possessions. Got caught a couple of times with the ball. You can obviously tell this is a step up from VFL level. He'll be better for the experience. Durham only had the 8 possessions, but he got injured and was thrown forward and did kick a goal. Hopefully he'll be right with a 10-day turnaround. Brad Scott said it was just a little bit of a rolled ankle, so hopefully he can walk that off. And Sartis came on as the sub, just had the 6 touches and didn't have a huge influence on the game, but I thought some of his 6 touches were relevant in that last quarter. So that is the game for the Bombers, a 18-point loss. What did you guys think of the game? Is there anything I missed? What do you think of the performance from Essendon? Let me know in the comments. I think we can all be pretty encouraged with this win. It was looking like it was going to be a very, very bad loss in that first quarter. So to fight back, to actually, give ourselves an outside chance of winning in that last quarter was just fantastic. And I can't fault the performance of the Bombers tonight. So subscribe to this channel, everybody, if you haven't already. Like this video, leave something in the comments. Have a great day, everybody. And as always, go Bombers.
Are the best, but they come get near.